Thank you so much for the opportunity and for being sharing my work with you. And thank you, Anna, Maria, and Sandra for the effort on doing that. And I'm feeling a bit nervous to talk in front of so many brilliant women. Oh my goodness! But I will try to make myself clear. Let's see. Let's begin. No? Oh, well, I can begin talking. I'm a very talking person. Photographic archives and the history of monuments have been, for me, important areas of research and project development for many years. Some of you may find it curious that I have dedicated myself to researching monuments to Lenin, since I have always worked with issues related to Latin America. But you will understand why. I have a few reasons for that. Personally, I've never seen a monument to Lenin, and only busts of Lenin and Marx made of styrofoam for a carnival parade in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. That's very strange. Yeah, can go ahead? Yeah.
I'm going to have to restart. You just continue.
Okay, no problem. I think it's necessary to contextualize my work entitled Good Apples, Bad Apples within a social, political, cultural framework that is dominating public debate in Brazil. Since the beginning of the 20th century, the communist threat has always been a source of fear and political lever in Brazil. Some of you may know the Brazilian situation, but it's worth remembering a few details. Brazil is a country with a conservative majority, and where the rich and the very rich are landed gentry, a legacy from colonial times. The fear of communism led to the military coup in 1964 and 20 years of dictatorship. I was born with the dictatorship until my youth. The socio-economic context of the huge contrast between extreme wealth and extreme poverty, the very low levels of education, and the accelerated evangelization of the most vulnerable population once again created fertile ground for the rise of an extreme right-wing discourse. In 2018, with the election of Jair Bolsonaro and his project to destroy democracy and establish an authoritarian and fascist government. Oh, you were looking.
I'm
everything.
Trying to fix it, but it's out of slides for some reason. Look,
no problem.
I'm doing nothing. This is what the computer does.
You're having a very good view.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Just
Right.
doesn't work. Don't know.
That's
what to do.
okay. We can just. Oh,
Yeah,
gosh!
that's exactly what happens.
Perhaps, okay, right. I go to
Maybe
this one, yeah, let's skip. And I hope the next one will be really the second one. The phenomenon of far-right propaganda and the ideological polarization of Brazilian society have been an important topic for many researchers in Brazil, especially. Polarization in itself is nothing new. Many other countries have been experiencing this reality today, even societies that have not yet suffered the consequences of the shift to the extreme right. In the case of Brazil, during former President Bolsonaro's campaign, the driving force behind the polarization was the insertion and use of a term that was first coined in the United States in the 90s, coming from a conspiracy theory of the American right wing to brainwash the population. This was the cultural Marxism. And you have lots of examples from that I captured from internet in just 5 minutes looking, researching there. Brazilian society was hit with all kinds of discourse built around an ideology that should be fought because it was evil. The left wants communism. The left is communism, as well as other agendas related to moral customs. The construction of this lie became a single impermeable truth for practically half of the Brazilian population. All conservatives must therefore become active militants against cultural Marxism. That was the message for all good people. And the logic of political engagement has been amplified on an exponential scale through social networks and a handful of websites that have become the only reliable source of information. In the first image over there, we have the slogan of Bolsonaro government, directly related to the Nazi slogan Deutschland über alles. This is Brasil acima de tudo. He just added the phrase, God above all. Deus acima de todos. In the second image, we see the Bolsonaro government's second Secretary of Culture in his first speech on TV. The setting and his pose were clearly inspired by Goebbels, as well as some parts of his speech, copied from a pronouncement by Hitler's propaganda minister. And this is the second secretary. We had 8 secretaries of Secretary of Culture in Brazil that in 4 years. Nobody wanted to. Nobody stayed.
I just need to open the first presentation and it's gonna be okay, I think I managed to fix it.
Okay. Okay, I go on. Right. Watching grow this process of polarization and understanding the damage it does to an illiterate population like the Brazilian is frightening. And the process seems irreversible now. It was in this context that I began to take an interest in political representations, the gestures and actions derived from real or invented ideologies, the cult of personality, of the myth, and of the saviors of the fatherland, from all the evil that permeates us. Then I came to the monuments in the landscape and how societies interact with them, with gestures of affection or anger. May I go?
Yeah? You should be able to switch now.
Right, perfect, thank you, thank you. So it was no wonder that in 2017, digging through my library, I rediscovered a set of Soviet postcards of tourist sites that belonged to a father of a Brazilian friend. He was a notable doctor in our city, with socialist tendencies obviously hidden during the 20 years of military dictatorship in Brazil. When I opened the postcard albums, I realized that there was at least one monument to Lenin in every city. At that point, I did a quick search on internet for images of some of those monuments, which I remembered having seen photos of when they were destroyed. What I noticed in that search was a plethora of websites, blogs, and social media profiles circulating millions of photographs of monuments to Lenin in countless configurations, reflecting conflicting feelings, love and hate through the image of something that remains in the imagination of individuals and social groups from different generations. Then I decided to create my own archive that time. In the multidimensional network, space and time are clearly non-linear. There is no hierarchy or possible chronology, just a patchwork of exposed images waiting to be processed somehow or not. With each search for images, new insertions appear. Digitized archive images are made available to the same extent that tourists post images of the last meeting with Lenin yesterday in a half-abandoned park. Given the emptying of the photography of the photographic image, both in the symbolic semantic field and the technical field, let's think about what has changed in terms of its circulation. From the postcard with the reproduction of a monument in the central square to the selfie in front of an empty pedestal. Sending a postcard to a family member or friend was a form of communication that proved the existence of strong bonds between two people, even at a distance. The digital medium has enabled a new way of communicating between individuals. Human beings circulate the image that touch them, whether through a relationship or of affection or conflict. Social networks have increased the scope of the individual's exposure, whatever they are, emptying interpersonal relationships that were previously restricted to family and close friends. On the other hand, by expressing certain feelings, they feel part of society, as if exercising citizenship depended on making their opinion public. The result of this was the creation of a multitude of virtual environments where people began to exercise both iconoclasm and idolatry as a way of expressing their ideology and thoughts. The idea of belonging to a specific social group is no longer a mere possibility, but almost an imperative. Well, this is the ultimate expression of the polarization. At least this is what I've been seeing in Brazil. Throughout the history of statuary, Lenin, in fact, has the honor of having the most statues and the tallest statue of any other historical figures not connected with religion. The Buddha and also perhaps Shiva would otherwise take these titles. Yeah. Despite the fact that Russia may have abandoned the dreams of Vladimir Lenin and fully embraced capitalism, statues of the founder of the Soviet Union can still be found in most Russian cities. It's clear that the meaning of the Lenin monument in the city has changed, just as much as the relationship of its citizens with the monument's present has changed. The end of the Soviet Union in 1991 led some countries to publicly destroy monuments to the former communist leader as a symbolic gesture. I don't know, you have seen already a lot of these images.
No, wrong button. Just press arrow again.
Right?
Yeah, and then again.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Let's see where I stopped. In the end of the Soviet Union, printed newspapers spread these images, inducing other countries to do the same. New waves of iconoclasm against Lenin statues occurred later, in the early 2000s, and then after the Euromaidan in Ukraine between 2013 and 14, when the images of the vandalisms were replicated digitally very quickly. Many people then began to search for, list, document, and share images of the monuments, whether surviving or destroyed, generating a kind of shared pathos between groups of individuals from several generations. What I also learned through this search was precisely how some societies dealt differently with the images of their demons of the past, producing total or partial erasures. On the internet, we can interpret the presence of these images as signs of a death conflict, where each individual expresses their hatred or love, relief or sadness, apathy or empathy, while some people insist on showing that the image of the myth remains intact, others expose the same image to ridicule. Publicizing the destruction of the monument is like lynching the once untouchable myth. Some people dedicate themselves to reconstructing the history of the monuments, whether they are abandoned, disappeared, or repositioned. Others show compassion for the decline of the myth's image by photographing the monument that has been relocated and taken to less noble places, such as parks and cemeteries of socialist art, which become part of tourist programs. However, it's not enough to photograph or review the photograph. It's necessary to share it in search of a catharsis that aims to purge feelings and unresolved passions. Let's see. The Good Apples, Bad Apples project had 3 phases and 3 formats. Now we go. Well, it started with a search for images on internet in 2017 for almost 2 years, and was resumed in 21 with the beginning of the war between Russia and Ukraine. This year, the updated collection took on the format of the book that you have here, a book or historical geographical guide containing around 1,000 photographs. Initially, the first 400 images were organized alphabetically by city and pasted into 11 postcard-sized concertina books, this type of book. Over the following months, further research brought me another 400 images, and then I adopted the installation format. Well, this is the first time I have shown these little books, and in a shelf like that. In both formats, the books, oh my goodness, yeah. In both formats, the book and the installation, I used alphabetical order to determine the sequence of the image, disregarding the geographical location of the cities. At first, I thought it would make more sense to stick to the logic of simple archiving, which somehow reflected better the obsessive aspect of the search for similar or opposite images. In the installation, the columns of images appeared when there was an accumulation of images of a single monument, especially those that are of great importance in the urban landscape and which, for this reason, are photographed repeatedly or have had their history of destruction publicized in many virtual circles. Therefore, in the installation, the large columns, like this one, for instance, represent more complex and better documented cases. In 2019, the Good Apples, Bad Apples project comprised around 800 photographs printed in all of them, and in the book they are the real format, 10 by 15 centimeters. Each color is related to the statue, the state of the monument. You have the colors: red, black, and white. Red for the monuments on the pedestals, black for the destroyed monument, and white for the monument that have been replaced or in situations that the monument has received another symbolic value. In 2022, the beginning of the war between Russia and Ukraine made me take up the project again, since the newspapers began to publish images of monuments to Lenin being reinstated by the Russians in the newly occupied territories of Ukraine. It wasn't necessarily the same monument that has been removed from a town, for instance. It could be any monument, often on an improvised pedestal. The important thing was to occupy and publicize the occupation of the urban space with something that represents Russian power. In addition, I noticed that many historical image websites from countries like Hungary and Czech Republic had exponentially increased their digital archives available online. Well, this is one. The installation, the idea was to fill the walls. Every time I have shown the installation like that, it comes from A to Z, Addis Ababa to Zitomir, and this is how it was presented in Arles, in 2 walls. And at the end of the wall there was the book, and I have 2 minutes more. Yeah. Just to finish. When I decided to turn the project into a book, it seemed more appropriate to create a structure that resembled a historical geographical guide associated with a photographic map made up of all the photographs gathered together like a world map. This is what you see there. And there is the folded map behind the book. The idea was to emulate the format of an old street guide, but in the case of Good Apples, Bad Apples, what the user learns through the sequence of pages is the history of a monument through the photographs. The world map was that was built to suggest the geopolitical location of the images and monuments was the result of a long process of manual and later digital editing. The appropriation of these images from the internet was not done with the authorization of the photographers or the media where they were posted. The credits of the authors of the photos and the media publishers are written on the frame of each photograph. What is at stake here is not a discussion about the monument itself, but rather the desire of human beings to express their beliefs and opinions about one of the founding myths of communism through the circulation of its image, for better or for worse. Finally, to go back to beginning, the discourse of the extreme right, before the advent of the internet, let's finish right now. In my childhood, because everybody asks me about why Good Apples, Bad Apples. In my childhood, under the military dictatorship in Brazil, I often heard the expression, you have to recognize and eliminate the rotten apples so as not to contaminate the good apples in the basket. At that time, the rotten or bad apple was the communist guerrilla who had to be killed. In the Good Apples, Bad Apples project, I proposed a semantic inversion. The bad apples are the decayed monuments, and the good apples are the monuments that are still standing on their pedestals, regardless of the significance of their permanence. Among the good apples, there are the red ones, which represent the monuments still in their original location, and the white ones, which connote the erasure of the original ideological factor, sometimes relegating to it only the aesthetic aspect, like the marble or plaster sculptures, often of dubious quality, which anonymously populate the endless corridors of the great museums. Thank you. The book, if you see, there are some instructions to allow you to know how to go on the pages. The map. It's double-sided. You have the city guide, the city index. At the end, my conclusions about my research. And this is the world map. And each rectangle is one photograph. What was not intended to be was the Ukraine in the protagonist in the middle of the world map. This happened simply. It was very, very touching for me. Right. Okay. I think it's. Thank you.